Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive on something we all do every day: walking.
Well, walking naturally, that is.
Exactly. We're ditching our shoes metaphorically, of course, and exploring the world of barefoot shoes with you.
And judging from what you've given us to dig into, it seems like you're ready to go all in. Not just kind of curious, but really understand what's behind this whole barefoot thing.
Yeah, you want to do it right, and we are here for it. No info dumps, just the coolest, most useful stuff to get you going on your own barefoot journey.
Love it. So where do we start?
Well, how about with the most obvious question: what even makes a shoe barefoot?
Getting right to the heart of it. I like it.
That Bear Tread article you sent does a really nice job of breaking it down visually with that table, comparing traditional shoes to barefoot shoes.
Yeah, that table's great. It really hits you over the head with how different the two approaches are.
Right. It's not just about looks. It's about how the shoe impacts the way your foot actually moves and functions.
And traditional shoes, with the narrow toe boxes and the heels being higher than the toes, they kind of force your foot into a position that's just not natural.
Right. It's like wearing gloves on your feet that don't let your toes do their thing.
Exactly. And over time, that can actually cause problems. Muscle imbalances, pain, you name it.
In a sense.
Huh.
So then the big question is, what's the upside?
Aside from the pure joy of feeling the ground beneath your feet.
Okay. Okay. Point taken.
Yeah.
But seriously, the Bear Tread article talks about some pretty compelling benefits. Stronger feet, better balance, improved posture.
And don't forget that best practices list you sent. That brings up a really key point. It's all about your why. Why are you interested in this whole barefoot thing?
Because if it's just a trend, well, that's one thing. But if you're looking for pain relief or wanting to move more naturally or maybe even boost your athletic performance.
Then understanding your motivation is huge, E. It's going to shape your entire experience.
Okay, so let's say you're sold on the idea. You're ready to ditch those traditional shoes and embrace the barefoot life. Where do you even begin?
Well, the Bear Tread article actually has this cool interactive graphic called the Barefoot Journey Progress slider.
Yeah.
And it kind of walks you through this transition process from week one all the way to fully embracing barefoot shoes.
It's like a roadmap for your feet.
Yeah, but like any good roadmap, it's more of a guide than a set of strict rules. I mean, the best practices and that rough script you sent, they both emphasize that everyone's journey is different.
Right, listening to your body.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the recurring theme here.
Absolutely. So yeah, the graphic's fun and all, but don't get too hung up on the timeline.
It's about the journey, not the destination. Or is it the opposite?
Let's just say it's about finding what works for you. And speaking of finding what works, Bear Tread suggests starting with a good old-fashioned assessment of your feet. Like, where are you at right now? How healthy are your feet?
Makes sense. You got to know your starting point, right?
Exactly. And if you have any serious concerns, maybe chat with a podiatrist first, just to be on the safe side.
Good call. Then comes the fun part, actually ditching the shoes. Though Bear Tread seems to be all about easing into it, like they don't want you going cold turkey or anything.
It's like with any new exercise routine. You got to start slow and gradually increase the intensity, otherwise you risk injury.
So instead of strapping on those barefoot shoes and immediately running a marathon?
Which you definitely shouldn't do, by the way.
Right. They recommend starting with short walks and gradually increasing the distance and duration over time.
Exactly. And this is where choosing the right barefoot shoes comes in. And yes, there's definitely a difference.
Okay, so spill the tea. What should we be looking for?
Well, first off, that wide toe box is key. Remember how we talked about those cramped toe boxes in traditional shoes? Barefoot shoes are all about letting your toes splay naturally.
So no more squished toes.
Got it.
What else?
Zero drop is another big one. That means the heel and the forefoot are level. No more elevated heel like you see in most conventional shoes.
And that helps with?
Everything, honestly. It promotes a more natural stride, reduces stress on your joints, the works.
It's like giving your feet the freedom to move the way they were designed to.
Exactly. And of course, you want a flexible sole, something that moves with your foot, not against it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, the best practices guide also mentioned experimenting with different cushioning levels. What's that all about?
Good catch. So not all barefoot shoes are created equal. Some have a bit more cushioning than others. It's really up to you and what feels most comfortable.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot between feeling the ground and not hating life.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And speaking of finding what feels good, let's not forget about strengthening those foot muscles. That's something the best practices guide really emphasizes.
Oh, right. It's like giving your feet a proper workout.
Exactly, because those muscles might be a bit deconditioned, especially if you've been wearing traditional shoes for a while.
So what kind of exercises are we talking about?
Well, toe spreads are great for starters. You basically just try to spread your toes as wide apart as possible, then relax and repeat. It strengthens those often neglected toe muscles.
Sounds easy enough.
What else? Calf raises are another good one. Because you're using those calf muscles differently in barefoot shoes, strengthening them can help prevent soreness and injuries.
Smart. Now, all this talk about preventing injuries kind of makes me wonder, are there any common challenges people run into when they make the switch?
Oh, for sure. Transitioning to barefoot shoes isn't always sunshine and rainbows. There can be bumps along the way.
I was afraid you might say that.
Yeah.
But hey, that's what we're here for, right? To delve into those challenges and figure out how to overcome them. It does feel like every time you try something new, there are going to be a few hiccups along the way.
Exactly. And barefoot shoes are no exception. But hey, that's part of the fun, right?
I guess. So let's talk about some of those common challenges, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so one thing that came up a few times in the sources you provided was blisters. Seems like those are a bit of a rite of passage for barefoot newbies.
Yeah, especially in the beginning when your feet are still getting used to this whole new way of moving.
So what's the solution? The rough script mentioned toe socks. Are those a must-have?
They can definitely help, especially if you're prone to blisters. Toe socks basically reduce friction between your toes, which is often the main culprit behind those painful rub spots.
Okay, so toe socks good to have on hand. And the best practices guide also stressed the importance of getting the right fit. Which makes sense. I mean, barefoot shoes come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, just like regular shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what works for one person might not work for another. It might take a little trial and error to find those brands and styles that fit your feet best.
So don't be afraid to experiment.
Exactly.
Exactly. And speaking of finding what works, let's talk about those woohoo moments. What are some positive signs that this whole barefoot thing is actually doing something good?
Oh, there are a few telltale signs that you're on the right track. One that Barefoot mentioned was improved balance.
Oh, interesting. So, like, you just feel more stable on your feet.
Exactly. As those foot muscles get stronger and you're engaging them more, you'll likely notice a difference in your overall stability and balance.
It's like your feet are finally waking up and saying, hey, we can actually deal this whole balance thing.
Exactly. They're not just there for show anymore. And for those who are into that whole sensory experience, the rough script mentions something called enhanced sensory feedback. Basically, your feet become more sensitive to the ground beneath you.
So you're really feeling those different textures and temperatures.
Exactly. It's like walking barefoot on the beach. You can feel the sand between your toes, the coolness of the water. It's all very stimulating.
And let's not forget about the folks who are drawn to barefoot shoes for pain relief.
Absolutely. Because for some people, transitioning to barefoot shoes can actually reduce or even eliminate foot pain that they've been experiencing.
Which makes sense if you think about it. I mean, when your feet are properly aligned and supported, it can have a ripple effect throughout your entire body.
Exactly. It's all connected. Now, speaking of connections, the Best Practices Guide had this really cool point about using texture for stimulation.
Oh, yeah, they were talking about walking on grass, sand, gravel, like
Yeah.
really mixing it up.
Exactly. Because those different textures provide different types of sensory input, which can help strengthen your feet and improve your balance.
It's like giving your feet a massage.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it also encourages you to be more mindful of your movement. You're not just going through the motions. You're actually paying attention to how your feet are interacting with the ground.
It's like taking a moment to appreciate the simple things in life, like the feeling of grass beneath your feet.
Exactly. It's about reconnecting with your body and with nature. And you know what they say? A little grounding can go a long way.
Well said. Seems like we've covered a lot of ground today, no pun intended.
We've explored the why behind the barefoot movement, the practical steps for transitioning, and even some strategies for overcoming challenges. But most importantly, we've encouraged our listeners to embrace their own unique barefoot journeys.
Because ultimately, it's all about finding what works best for you, your feet, and your lifestyle.
Ah,
So whether you're a seasoned barefoot enthusiast or just starting out, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep enjoying the journey. Till next time, happy adventuring.